Hello, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the next episode of Amiable Arguments. There's a few things that I'd actually like to say before we kick off with this one. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone enormously because just before I started this podcast, I actually managed to hit the magic 50 subscribers. Which may be peanuts to some of the greats out there, but I assure you, to me, given that I've been doing this for a few months now, and by a few months I mean almost a year, I suppose I ought to be very, very grateful that some of you have decided to bestow upon me your time and attention, so I'm very, very grateful to it. By way of celebration for that Magic 50, I have with me today an absolutely fantastic guest that I had the pleasure of having a bit of a drunken pub discussion with. There he is. Yeah, he ain't denying it. He ain't denying it.
Oh, damn straight. It was after the film job that was.
It was.
We went to a pub in central London and bonded over many things.
And then I flexed on him by saying that I had a podcast, and that was it. It was like putty in the hands after that. So,
literally.
Yeah, so, Joe, introduce yourself to people, mate.
Oh, I'm Joe. People call me Hindsight on my online life. I from London, and I don't know. I've never actually had to do one of these introduction things, but yo fam, I guess.
All right, excellent. There we are. I think that just about sums it up, doesn't it, ladies and gentlemen? There we are, yo fam.
But yeah, I'm Joe. About 24 years old. Worked in the film industry for about 4 years now. Musician, composer, amateur social commentator, I guess, as I'm planning to skip back onto YouTube and start doing shit on there. So, am I allowed to swear, or is the algorithm going to fuck everything up?
Am I allowed to swear, or is the algorithm going to fuck everything up? He says. Well, you know what? We've opened the floodgates now, ladies and gentlemen, so there we go.
Here we go.
It's absolutely fine. Hide your kids, because Joe's got a right mouth on him. It's fine.
I'll put some Vaseline on it to make it nice and soft as well.
Very sexy. Right, moving on. Right, ladies and gentlemen, today Joe and I are going to be talking about something which, on the surface of it, might seem, I think, quite niche. However, I promise you it's actually of the most important standing. And
that is my message tone. Pac-Man agrees.
Pac-Man agrees. Oh wow, this is going fantastically. Right, no, it's all cool. It's very, very chill, very laid back here.
Yeah,
so, right, Joe and I are going to be talking about subversion to get to the point today. That's what Joe came to me and said he wanted to talk about. I thought it was a cracking choice. So we'll be discussing things that we're very unqualified to talk about. And we'll be discussing them in a way so sure of ourselves that we appear qualified, and you're all going to love it. So
it's almost as if you don't need education and stuff to put value on yourself. Maybe it's just about what's in here.
Absolutely, I quite agree.
Just because you have a piece of paper that tells you that you're qualified doesn't mean that you are.
Exactly.
Look at the current education system and the people within it, you start to realise it's not all that. But we'll get into that, won't we?
Well, I suppose we will. So, ladies and gentlemen, in preparation for starting to talk about subversion, I just wanted to read you this quote, which is on the back of a book, which is a compilation of the writings of Thomas Paine, who was a famous Enlightenment thinker, philosopher, and journalist writer, I suppose. He led an amazing life, but I'd just like to read this quote. An army of principles will penetrate where an army of soldiers cannot. It will march on the horizon of the world, and it will conquer. So if you win the battle of ideas, you win the battle for humanity's soul, essentially, without having to. In the same way that Sun Tzu says in The Art of War that the most successful battle is that in which not a sword needs to be swung or an arrow needs to be fired. If you can,
in the current day, a bullet needs to be fired.
If you can defeat them without firing a shot, then that's the most sound victory of all. So, Joe, start us off with why you wanted to talk about this, of all things.
So, about a year and a half ago, I think it was, the Call of Duty game that came out around then had like an advert about the art of subversion, and that it had Yuri Bezmenov, who was the KGB defector. They had a video clip of him basically talking about the art of subversion on one of the trailers for it, and I remember the entire internet kind of just blew up about it, and then I watched the entire 1 hour thing on YouTube, and it basically explained a lot of what I've discovered over the past 4 or 5 years of me being kind of awoken to the kind of political landscape that we're going at. So, what he describes was that the West, specifically in this case, is being subverted, um, using various different things and systems against us, um, in almost in a way to devalue the moral integrity of our, I guess you could say, the Judeo-Christian framework that we have, the moral framework that we have,
Mm.
and kind of changing it and then allowing malicious people, I guess, or malicious forces, for lack of a better term, to kind of take advantage of that and manipulate that to whatever they want. Whether it be to gain power, to centralize power, I have no idea. I'm not one of these people, so I don't know the answers. All we can do is speculate. But that was the reason why I wanted to kind of make the comparisons with you, from what Yuri Bezmenov said and that was 41 years ago, I think that was, from then
Yes.
to the end of 2021, which is where we are now.
It is. The timeline all adds up.
Yeah.
And just to explain, ladies and gentlemen, this isn't some sort of tinfoil hat fan fiction theory thing. Yuri Bezmenov was a...
The Frogs Day! Look at that.
Alex Jones, get off this. You weren't invited on. Yuri Bezmenov was a ex-KGB, was he? KGB?
Yes.
Agent
That's
for...
like the equivalent of the CIA or something.
Yes.
In Soviet Russia.
Yeah, for the Soviet Union, and he defected to the West. He fled through India, didn't he? And then eventually found his way into the USA, where he proceeded to give lectures on the Soviet tactics for how to destroy the West, basically, how to undermine its ideals and how to subvert it so that it began to adopt the Soviet Union's communist ideals. And Joe, you clearly believe we're going through that time now.
Yeah, so there was something I researched a while back called, I think is it something generational, straw house generational theory. And as each generation progresses, there's like the fourth turning, and I feel like we're approaching that right now. I think it happens every 20 to 40 years, and I think that's what we're heading into now. We're heading into that fourth turning where something's cooking. I mean, we look at what's happening in America right now. Even the partisan left is saying that they're on the brink of civil war right now. So the mass polarization and kind of just not even, I wasn't going to say bipartisan, I'm just trying to remember my words. You have, let's just say it, the left and the right as parties, I guess, or collectives.
Okay.
And it's funny because they don't usually represent what people who are leftist or right-wing think at all, but these are the goalposts that the establishment pushes, and they're just clashing and clashing and clashing, and something's happening there. And then we look at what's happening. I mean, if you looked at, did you watch the Yuri Bezmenov thing?
I watched it last night in preparation.
Nice.
Yes.
Oh, you watched it last night. I haven't watched it in months, but he talks about the different systems in which he and things and concepts that are used to subvert people. So the trans rights, race right. Well, he doesn't say trans. That I don't think he had the concept of that back then. But
I don't think that was really a conversation.
It was the gay rights. That's what it was. Gay rights and all the different rights and stuff, and how they will be used as a tool to manipulate and subvert people. And then we look at what's been happening with Black Lives Matter, Antifa, over the past 2 years. And I have some opinions about that. We'll get to that at some point. We look at what's happened with the LGBTQ community and the polarization with them, and it's funny because then you hear people who are technically part of these groups, myself included, and I don't fit the narrative, so they almost try to ostracize us.
Yes, just so I can explain, Joe is actually Asian.
Yes.
You can't see his face, but he's very, very Asian.
Yeah. Actually, I am Latin. Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry, Latin.
I am Lasian. There we go. No,
There we go.
I have a dark skin tone, and obviously I know what I'd be labeled as, but I'll leave that to your imaginations, because I believe my mind and my words are what define me, not my skin color.
I entirely agree.
And what you notice is that kind of destroys half of the identitarians' mindset, because they're based upon forcing into these categories and then assuming how you're going to have to base on them. That's why Joe Biden says, if you don't agree with me, you're not black, because he, under the identitarian mindset, he assumes that because you are this or that, you have to act a certain way under the standards that have been set for you based upon that category that you fit into. That's how intersectionality works.
Doesn't it imply that to be black is to have a particular state of mind?
That's exactly what they're trying to say. That's how they subvert you. They put you into these boxes and then they tell you this is how you think. And if you don't, you're not this, you're not that.
Okay.
You understand?
So, but just so that we're not scattering about, I'll try and keep this conversation as focused as I can, because I'm worried that now all of a sudden we're saying that Joe Biden is a communist subverter that was brought up by the KGB or something.
No, you wouldn't say that.
So, right, well, I wouldn't, but I think that okay, so let's dive into a few of those things that you've unpacked. Okay, so we're talking about, basically, I did a podcast a few ago where we discussed all the ideas of woke and all of these things are. Wokeness is essentially identitarian, and if we were to take it from the, I don't know, if I were to have to use a credible source, such as an actual communist, to define what woke was in their own words, I suppose I would go to Guardian columnist Ash Sarkar, for example. And she defines wokeness on Novara Media. Actually, first she said it doesn't exist, and then she says...
I saw this.
She said it doesn't exist, but what it is equity along class, racial, and sexual lines. So it's intersectional socialism, as it were. It's socialism, but moving away from class to being more about racial justice and sexual justice, which feels like a strange set of words to put together. But you understand what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I do. Critical race theory was kind of that entire they call it an idea. It's literally been put into schools in the West. But critical race theory is basically is it Ibram X. Kennedy and what's her name? I can't remember the other woman's name.
Well, in charity to Ibram X. Kendi, I don't think he's ever personally identified as a critical race theorist, even if he does seem to adopt a few of their talking points.
Ibram X. Kendi has always been the person I remember, because I know he's been speaking about a lot of it. But there's one woman, I can't remember who created it. Let me quickly Google
Kimberly Crenshaw?
Kimberly Crenshaw, perfect. There we go. Kimberly Crenshaw is the one I was trying to remember.
The founder of intersectionality.
Yes. So yeah, she basically took what the socialists kind of did, and which was where it was based upon class. And I actually prefer that one to this, oddly enough. Apart from what happened in Russia over 100 years ago, but we won't get into that one. But I find it more reliable to base it on class, because class is not inherent to one's individuality on a certain level of these racial identitarian things or the sexual ones. But that's what Kimberly Crenshaw did. She took that and adapted it onto what she would call an American way of thinking, and it became based on race, because and everything was based upon race, and that's how it happened. Then obviously recently they've kind of adapted onto the whole sexual identity, gender identity stuff, and here we are.
Okay.
Reaping the benefits.
The thing that is most transparent to me is that even now, and I think this is a good example of how the subversion happens. So according to Yuri Bezmenov, it starts fundamentally with the first phase of the four-phase plan imposed by the KGB tactics, the first of which is demoralisation. So it's to fundamentally undercut a civilization's confidence within itself and its values. It's to make them question the things that make them them, and to look elsewhere to find their meaning. And we're seeing that an awful lot these days. There's a lot of people. I don't even need to talk about internationally. I can now say that the greatest critics of Britain or of America come from within the country itself. Which
is
never,
ironic, isn't it?
well, it never used to be the case. Even back in the in World War II, obviously you had a coalition government between Winston Churchill and Clement Attlee, and it was both agreed between Churchill's Conservatives and Attlee's Socialists that Britain was fundamentally, as a nation and as an idea, worth preserving and defending against the Nazi menace. There was not one side of the opposition that thought actually Britain's just not worth it because we've done loads of evil imperial stuff and we're really, really bad and we should just actually, throw it all away. Whereas now you get the feeling that certainly it's coming increasingly from the left side, but I feel that the right are implicit in the guilt of it because they go along with it spinelessly and they accept all of the presuppositions laid down by it. You don't hear a robustness from the right wing in actually... the right wing is supposed to be conservatives, but I'm asking myself at this point, what are they actually conserving?
Maybe then I think what they call neoconservatives, I think they've become dramatically more authoritarian, which is unironically where the left is. They're more on the authoritarian left, which is more socialist and to some extent progressive. So I think that's where it is. I think it's almost the spectrum is kind of flipped on its side, and it's not being based upon the left and the right so much anymore, more based upon the authoritarian and the libertarian mindset. And when I say libertarian, I don't mean like big L libertarian. I'm not talking about anarchists. I'm talking about almost as a spectrum.
Right.
And that's how they do it. They subvert in order to control, to manipulate, to subjugate. And that's how they gain power. I mean, I can't remember who it was that said this, but the identitarians, they understand their strength is within their power. Someone who was part of Antifa or Black Lives Matter, I can't remember which one, who I heard this from. I think I remember hearing about on Tim Pool's podcast, but that's what that's what their way of thinking. They know in order to put in their programs, their policies, whatever, they need to gain more power, and that's what they've been doing. So in fact, you basically explain yourself. I'm just rambling at this point, but yeah.
Right. Okay. So essentially, then, from your point of view. I suppose the thing that we've experienced in the past 2 years, putting aside the absurdity of everything happening with COVID, we're beginning to see a lot of an insanely high number of conversations about race. There is not an institution left within the United Kingdom that isn't finding itself having conversations about race all of the time, constantly saying we need to rethink how we approach everything. So that everything we did up until this point wasn't good enough and hasn't worked, and we're basically going to have to rework, and it's all done under the word equity. And to be fair, I mean, it's at the point now, isn't it, where the three words, what is it? Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, and you can't find those. Those words are ubiquitous now. You can find them in the ethos of just about every government department, every university, every bank, every
job application,
every school, every job application, but nowhere within those words. Is there at all any mention of liberty, which I would have thought was the foundational Western principle? So how have we gone from liberty to equality? Is this subversion?
Subversion. You said it yourself. I was going to do a bum bum bum.
Oh, I'm sorry. We'll try again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's basically what I believe has happened. So you said demoralization. So over the past, I'd say after World War II, it was a gradual process. I look at what happened in Vietnam, and you saw how people were kind of disgruntled with the American government after that, the anti-war people. And it's almost as if the East, for lack of a better term, so Soviet Russia at this point, the KGB, you noticed this and took advantage and started trying to take advantage of this. And then Chernobyl happened, and then it kind of got pushed onto the Chinese a little bit to do it as well. But they gradually started almost not necessarily sending people over, but influencing people in the West to subvert. So they did this in education. I think Yuri Besson said this as well. It does this in education. They do it in various different areas of control, and gradually gets it ingrained into the culture. So Antifa are the descendants of is it Revcom, Revolutionary Communists.
Yes.
That's where Antifa stems from. That became that as the years have gone by, that's become more prominent as we've realized over the past couple of years. And Black Lives Matter is ran by revolutionary communists, trained Marxists. I think I can't remember the woman who was in charge of it that bought a bunch of houses.
In America, yeah, she bought
Yeah,
4, didn't
Patrice
she?
something. Yeah, she bought a bunch of houses with the money that she raised for Black Lives Matter. Which I mean, well, yeah, definitely she helped Black Lives her own, but she basically used these ideals to suck the money out and then gain power. So through subversion, they gain power. Through power, they gain influence. Through influence, they can then start to make the changes that they want. And I think that's what's happening. And that's why I think we're going into a war, because there's a lot of liberty-minded individuals. I think that's better than saying libertarian, but more liberty-sided individuals, regardless of if they're left or right-leaning, that aren't having this. And I can see this. The issue is that the subversion has happened on such a high level that it's literally entered every single facet of our culture, every single facet of media, of big tech, to the point where if you say anything liberty-minded that doesn't align or that goes against the ethos and the principles of these identitarians, you get banned, you get shut down. So they have such control over these things.
I mean,
The mainstream media that's propped up all the time, even though they lie and deceive and subvert all the time, are part of this
yes.
as well.
And I would personally like to clarify my own thoughts, because we keep
Go
saying
ahead.
we keep using the word they an awful lot, and I don't
Go
believe
ahead.
in some sort of conspiracy of this is not some spider web of Illuminati people. It is simply people who have grown up and have now, and have gone through the education process with these ideals in mind, so that they've been taught to lean more on equity and equality than they have on individualism and liberty
I agree.
and classical liberal ideals, to the point where now that they inhabit as individuals those parts of society where they have voices. So you get this a lot I see a lot of the BBC guilty in this. I see Sky News accepting this. I see the Conservatives accepting this. They adopt all of the presuppositions. Like, for example, why are the Conservatives in favour of the LGBT movement? And I don't mean that because I think that the Conservatives are like anti-gay or anything. What I mean is, why are the Conservatives in favour of, which are supposed to be a party of individualism, why are they in favour of a movement which is a movement of collectivism? There is no gay community. There are individuals in society who happen to share one commonality with one another. But the idea that they're a community, that you could get them all to sit around a table and through the sheer power of them all being gay, they could get along and make some magical, wonderful things happen, just seems ridiculous to me. But again, this is exactly what we're saying about the idea of subversion. It's getting the minority groups to bolster them in the same way that you would once have tried to bolster the proletariat in the Marxist revolution in order to overthrow the system.
And that's how they gain power. So they gain power through all these individuals who kind of just almost blindly follow the flock, just because they have a common thing that lumps them all together, even though it doesn't define them as an individual. And they use that to gain power and to gain influence, because the big mob is scary, and there's so many of them together, so they must actually be the majority. Perhaps we should change our entire lifestyle and way of thinking based upon that. And that's how they do it. But who's actually controlling that? Whoever's at the top, or the people who are running the show. And who that is, we don't know in certain cases. That's the scary thing.
Well, fundamentally built within the Black Lives Matter manifesto is the idea of the abolition of the family, which is an entirely... They did take that down, but it's a fundamentally Marxist tenet.
Yeah, to destroy the nuclear family idea.
Yes. Which is, of course, what by our heritage of, it's a bit of a buzzword at this point, but Judeo-Christian values obviously involves the nuclear family. So every aspect of society is being attacked and prodded at. But I would just want to come back on one thing, which is, what would you say to someone who simply says that this is just how the world works? As time moves on, ideas change and things move along. And is it subversion? Or is it rather subversion? And is it not simply that as time moves on, ideas that were once robust and revolutionary and enlightening are now being pushed out in favour of new ideas that have won the battle, because those are the ideas that are being implemented?
I'd argue that you could make that argument, but the reason why I'd go against that would be because of the methods used. These aren't principled individuals, some of these people. These people aren't playing by a moral framework that aligns with our own. They are using deception. They're using many different malicious tactics to kind of, subvert, to make the joke, but to basically enact their framework on people. And then again, these people don't really... When you ask these people, what do you actually think? What do you actually believe? They either parrot the same talking points that every other person has been told to, that there's people who run the show are told to do, or they don't actually know. They just kind of just do it. So a lot of these people don't have their own principles. They kind of just do it, whether it be out of fear or the need to be included in something, kind of like a pack mentality. The lone wolf dies, but the pack survives. I think that's from Game of Thrones. Don't sue me, George. But that mindset where you need, where people want to fit in, and when the nuclear family's been destroyed, you have a lot of people who don't get that feeling of belonging from their family anymore. So you have a lot of broken families where the father or the mother isn't in the picture, or there's abuse, or any one of these many things that can happen. And then where can these people get the validation that they need? Because you do need validation when you're growing up. You become, I guess, I think it's called the most selfish when you're a teenager or a child, but that's because you need it, because you're trying to find your sense of self, your sense of individuality. If you can't get that, you get it from collectivism. And when you're brought into these collectives, you abide by them just because you want to feel part of something.
Well, then, the way that you say it, though, it does sound like that we have to accept, then, that this has come about because of a moral failing from within our own actual framework and our own societies, because if our societies had been run and governed and led well, then these people wouldn't have any need to turn to these collective groups.
Exactly, and that's how we've been subverted. These people create these issues. I think there's a saying, creating dragons to slay, and then these people have a vendetta to slay these dragons, even though they were manifested by, in some cases, by the people they are looking up to for wisdom and guidance.
There is...
Go on.
Oh, no, please, continue.
I was going to say, I've noticed something as well. A lot of... So you mentioned the diversity people and inclusion people. How they get their jobs is they create these issues. They manifest issues out of thin air. So they'll talk about, there is racism in this, on that, and when it never came up in any conversation, and it really wasn't. But they make these things up so they can justify their positions, so that they can maintain their power. Because if they actually solve these issues, then what's the use for them? It's like I've noticed some charities, they make issues where there may not have actually been any, so they can justify their existence and justify why they should keep getting funding. And then
Like
we used to say them,
Stonewall.
and then used to say that they actually spend the money on actually solving issues. No, they'll. It's like big pharma. They will put money towards it, but they won't actually solve the issue. They'll prolong it in a way.
Yes, yes, it does seem to be the case. I'd like to talk to you for a little bit because I feel like this is a part of the conversation.
Go ahead.
Because I feel like, again, it's taken in isolation. It wouldn't arouse a great deal of suspicion in me, but given that we're seeing all of these symptoms of a sick society at the same time, which has clearly, as under the guidance of demoralisation, lost its confidence in itself and what it is, can we talk a little bit about the whole the concepts of decolonisation in the UK and tearing down statues?
Go ahead.
Because I obviously have know very little of America. I've only been there once, and it wasn't for anything more important than a trip to Disneyland one time. So I can't state to have fully immersed myself in its culture and everything. But there is a hero of mine, a relatively minor person called Thomas Jefferson.
I know who it is.
And his third president of the United States and signer of the Declaration of Independence, and his statue, which had been in New York City in the City Hall for 187 years, was removed the other week, unanimously by New York's council, and. For it to be unanimous, for not a single person to hold up their hand and sort of go, maybe we shouldn't tear down, take away a statue of an actual founding father of the United States. It just to not have one voice in defense of, I mean, imagine the Soviet Union in all of its power tearing down its own statues of Lenin. You would think that it was in the process of hating and destroying itself. You would think it's basically forsaken everything and not... But that we seem to be giving it a pass. I'm confused.
Let me tell you a story. So there's another great American figure other than Thomas Jefferson that I really look up to as well, and that's Frederick Douglass.
Oh, great man.
Very great man. I mean, he said basically, I can't remember the specific quote, but he basically said anti-American, basically anti-American. What about us? So, and that made him consider if our philosophies and our principles are what they say they are, then we include these types of people, and then that's what happened.
Yes.
Mainly because of Frederick Douglass. Sigourney, I don't remember what her name is. Who said "ain't I a woman?" That was another one. But
right.
Frederick Douglass specifically, his statue was vandalized as well. You understand? So you have a lot of these people.
Frederick Douglass, whom was black.
Yes, Frederick Douglass was a black man. Keep this in mind. And Antifa and Black Lives Matter rioters, because that's what they are, vandalized his statue, the statue of the man who's probably responsible for the starting of civil rights and actually making people be seen as individuals before race or ethnicity. And they damaged his statue. So let me highlight, because we could have gone off on a tangent about why that happened to Thomas Jefferson, but it's because these people don't actually have principles that they abide by. They don't actually have an understanding of history, of geopolitics, of politics period. They kind of just follow what they're told to do and then create chaos. And that's why they call themselves anarchists, but anarchists aren't running around burning everything. Anarchists are the extreme version of libertarian, which is the antithesis of what they are as socialists and Marxists. So they don't have principles. I think that's the best I can describe it without going off on a tangent. And they don't have an actual common goal, if that makes sense. They kind of just do and destroy what they're told to, or what they think they want to destroy for whatever reason. Because them destroying the person who, yes, may have had slaves in the past, and I bloody hate that Don't get it twisted about Thomas Jefferson.
Mm.
But he did lay the foundations for what is considered one of the greatest nations on the planet. You look at the good, you look at the bad, and you try to enhance it and make it better. That's what you need to do. You don't do that by destroying history and then acting as if this history is invaluable, even with its flaws. Because with the flaws of America, there are many good. The ideas of liberty that many people outside of the West look to for inspiration is being destroyed right now by these people. People like Thomas Jefferson, people like Frederick Douglass, and their legacies are being tarnished right now because these individuals don't value them. They don't want them to exist because they want power. And in order to take out power, they need to take away any other spheres of influence, and that includes these two figures. Does that make any sense?
It does, but I can't hesitate but feel it to be slightly disingenuous to say that it's only for pure naked power. I don't. It smacks a little bit too much of Michel Foucault, who, the postmodernist and Marxist. He was all of. Everything should be seen through the lens of power, but I don't think that's how people work. It's a mistake that's often laid against the capitalists by the socialists, that they only care about power and money. But we as people, and certainly I as someone who adores acting, I think should understand that people don't just get up in the morning and think about power. They have thoughts, they have dreams, they have aspirations, they have things that irk their noses the wrong way. And I think that the people doing this are doing it because they genuinely believe that they're doing good and right. But
I see what I've done wrong. So I've been using power in a general sense instead of a specific sense. I think so. Let me explain. When I say power, I mean influence, moral notoriety, that kind of thing. So they're doing these things because they think it's morally good to do these things, and because of that, they think some of these socialists believe that they will be part of the people who will be running the show. Because remember, socialism, it needs a centralized power structure to kind of run everything. That's why I say power.
But they
But a
won't.
lot of these people, sorry.
But they won't. They won't be the
Of
ones
course.
in charge.
Well, they don't know that because they've been subverted. They are all a lot of the people that you mentioned when you disagreed with me. I agree. They do have their dreams and aspirations, but they are feeding into the power structure that centralizes power. That's why I believe in a decentralized network. Don't at me, crypto people who also believe in that. But
we will have no crypto sponsor shills on this podcast. No, I'm joking.
But I do agree that a centralized network is the best way for it to run. Same with computing. If you have all the power, all the control, all the servers centralized in one area, and something happens, you're kind of screwed. But if it's spread out among different nodes, if one fails, others will make up for it. I believe that can be translated into the individual mindset. If people are treated and think based on an individual level, that's how we flourish. That's how we grow as humans and get better. What happens is the kind of centralizing on a specific ideology with no nuance and no different opinion or perspective. You all have to look at it through this boat to fit into this group, and if you don't, you're an apostate essentially, and that's the issue. That's what I mean by power. These people gain power through controlling a bunch of people and centralizing it to generate power. And how they generate power is they have all these people believing them and following them and doing what they say and abiding by their rules and their moral frameworks, whatever moral frameworks they have, if they have any at all. That's how they gain power. But the many people who are kind of following this, I agree, they do have their own individual minds, but again, they've been subverted into following these things so that they can, for whatever reason, like I said before, some of them just want to feel valued. Some of them I want to do what they believe is actually the right thing to do, and they've just gotten the wrong information or aren't processing it properly. So don't get twisted. I'm just being general when I say power.
Sure.
But there are individuals who do mean well, and they're just going about the wrong way. And I speak to a lot of them all the time. I speak to people who are very partisan left, and they are great people until you talk about politics, and then rah, it's just an explosion because they will defend their ideologies to death because they believe it to be the right thing to do. But there are malicious actors who are at the top of this pyramid who do want to centralize power on themselves. You look at the woman who runs Meta, who bought 5 houses or whatever. Prime example.
Yes. The the thing is that we do seem to be sleepwalking into this. And by us, I obviously mean that a society can really only do, and this is why I'm feeling so disheartened by it all. You could say that I've been demoralized. But the point is that
Step 1 complete.
yeah, thanks. No, we're way past step 1 by this point. But for example, we've had a Conservative government for 10 years now, and yet we still have the legalisation of affirmative action. We have it now so that on whatever job application you apply for, you have to... I had this when I applied for a job back in the springtime. It was, please let us know your race and sexual preferences so that we can't discriminate against them. It's
I have a lot to say on this because
it's like, yeah, but what if I didn't tell you my sexual preferences, then you wouldn't be able to discriminate against them. But the fact that you want me to tell you them, it actually empowers you to do so if you did want to. It's a complete double thing.
Let me tell you something that happened last week. So my very, very trusted business partner and partner in crime, I call her, who I haven't met in person because she was meant to come last year to the UK. Flight back messed up, she's also a YouTuber. She's got just under 1,000 subs. She actually helped me apply for a job. It was a composer liaison manager job at some new startup company. I won't name what they're called.
Sure.
And the first thing on the job application thing was about equity and racial diversity, and they want me to basically explain the oppression I've gone through. And I hated the fact that that was there. Now, she told me to do it and told me to word out as well as possible. And I did that to the best of my abilities. And let me highlight, it also said that anyone who is from a marginalized group is guaranteed an interview, not necessarily the job, but guaranteed the interview. Safe to say I didn't get the job. I didn't even get the interview. So I've noticed something. So the first time I ever did one of these diversity things, it didn't work. Proving, and I've noticed this with acting agents as well, because they push the BAME thing. I feel like they are just doing it just so people don't attack them. Just so that Antifa doesn't go down to their, or Black Lives Matter doesn't go down to their offices and burn it down, like what they did last year and the year before with the riots after George Floyd's murder. And
yes,
if you want to get to that, I believe Chauvin should have got manslaughter, not all charges. So I think that's what people are doing. I don't believe they actually believe in any of these things, the affirmative action things as well. I disagree with affirmative action. I'll get into that later. But I think these people are just putting these things up just so that people will leave them alone and won't attack their businesses. I believe that's the general census here.
Yeah, which is a scary idea, because obviously I don't want them to do it because I think it's in principle wrong, and the people that they are actually pandering to hate them because they are by being what they are, a form of white supremacy in their own language. But this is the thing, and I find it remarkable because I being white and you being black, but we're
I thought Asian or Latin.
I'm sorry. The gig's up. The gig's up. I'm calling you out on this. All right. Right. That pot of paint in the corner of your room wasn't convincing. No. But there is nothing about that inherently to me that makes you less English, or that makes me less English or British, or whatever you want to define it as, because I don't think to be British is to be a race. I think to be British is to adopt the merits of the culture and to have a certain mindset about not a certain mindset. I think that's wrong, because then that implies that, well, if you have to be like a libertarian, or you have to be a socialist, or but you have to. There is an innate idea of what Britain is, and I think a lot of people, I've seen it a lot from BLM. I have to say that their racial identity transparently matters more to them than their national identity ever could.
Of course.
Even if they were to get absolutely everything that they wanted, and Britain were to be turned into a place in which they claim they could feel safe and happy and prosperous, they would still identify far greater with the black diaspora of people scattered throughout the world than they would have any sort of affinity with the island that they're actually on.
Do you know why Black Lives Matter has gotten all their power? It's because the ideal that black people matter is a very, very good thing. The issue is it kind of takes black people out of human and focuses all the attention on that. And then because of that, because people want to they want black people to matter, because some people believe that they don't. I don't think any group of people matter. I just believe that humans matter, period. But because of that, people are latch on to that, and that allows them to then subvert and then do the things with the new following that they've got, with the money, with the people pushing them forward. And then if you attack that, by proxy, you're attacking black people. That's how it works. I think like the last YouTube video I made, which was about a year and a half ago, I spoke about Terry Crews. He actually
I watched it. It's very good, and I'll link it below, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much. But yeah, he basically said that it's a good mantra. Black people do matter, but it's being used in this tribalistic way, which and then people can then usurp power and influence based upon that, because people want to be good, people want to be moral. This is what you said earlier, and that's the issue. They focus on the identity of the individual rather than the individual themselves. They dismiss the individual, because if they don't focus on this thing, Black Lives Matter has an organization, let alone a concept, won't exist. They want to keep their influence. The people running Black Lives Matter, they want to keep this following, this network of people who will follow them just because they believe that black people do matter, regardless of if they agree with the Marxism part of it or not. And because of that, they keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. But in reality, I believe personally that the way to dismiss racism is to stop treating race as a viable concept to judge people on. It's more what you are than who you are. Do you understand? There are races on the planet. That is a fact. A lot of people will go and say that race isn't a concept. Yet it is. But to act like there's like 5 or 6 races is disingenuous. There's hundreds of races. Do you understand? So to say that it's just white people, black people, Latin people, Asian people, and I guess Aboriginals or whatever is disingenuous.
And people from Devon.
Devon. Can't forget the Devon race. But yeah, that's the thing, man. I really want to stop treating race as if it's the main like factor of what a human is, because it's just not. And it's centralized around these 5 general concepts of what race is, or 6 or 7, and it's really hundreds. And it proves that it doesn't actually mean as much as you think it is. Because at the end of the day, we're all Homo sapiens. We all stem from the same place. If you go back about 50 to 100,000 years ago, we have a common ancestor. I think it was said most of the population has a common ancestor about 4,000 to 8,000 years ago. So we all stem from the same.
And his name was Adam. No, I'm joking. I'm joking, ladies and gentlemen.
Some people will say that that's true.
Watch my atheism podcast.
Yes, I'm watching it. So we can talk about religion.
No, let's keep it going.
Yeah, but yeah, I really do think that the whole racial identitarianism thing is being pushed because some people want to get power, and what way to get power than to be the first or second organization to kind of make this the main core argument, and then to use that as a way to take power. Again, Black Lives Matter is run by trained Marxists. You cannot make this stuff up. You understand?
Well, it's
I'm going to get assassinated. Watch.
The entire flow of this conversation is essentially when we, obviously not by chance, by the steady growth of centuries and centuries, the primary ideal on these islands has been liberty, and even more so in the United States. It always, ever since Magna Carta, I suppose you would argue, or even what the Magna Carta was based on, which was the pledge made by Henry I, who was one of the early Norman kings. But going back further and further, I don't want to riff for 10 minutes about the evolution of liberty in the United Kingdom. All of this to say, though, that liberty has been our primary ideal, and now now today I hear far more about equality than I ever have done. But equality...
It's not actual equality, that's the thing. They kind of taken equity and forced it onto what equality means. It's just not true.
But this is what subversion is as well, and this is what the critical race theorists do. They expand the definition of values and words in order for them to incorporate things in an extra capacity. It's like, oh, so you're for equality? Well, yes, to some degree, I absolutely am, because I'm pro equality of opportunity, and I think that the greater we can get to, so that any person born within this country is able to get towards their hopes, then that's great, and we shouldn't treat them differently by merit of where they come from in the United Kingdom. You know, someone... I don't care if someone's from Liverpool or Kent. If they're the best person for the job, they're the best person for the job.
Meritocracy.
Yes, meritocracy. But now all of a sudden it's becoming increasingly, well, we don't have X number of this race in this place, and we don't have X number of this gender here, and we don't have all of these sorts of things. There was an Instagram post by a former colleague of mine the other day, who I have a deal of respect for, and I know that she means what she says, and I didn't bite at it, but it did irk me, which was that she was talking about it was basically just a tweet that was saying something along the lines of, I can't stand white people arguing about, complaining about the fact that there are fewer job opportunities for them now in the acting industry, and the fact that now you get a lot of opportunities where it said we're looking for BAME only, or this, that and the other, and rather than arguing against it on the fact that it's anti-individualistic, it's anti-meritocratic, it's anti-liberty, it's all of these things. The tweet endorsed, it basically said, well, they need to shut up because the majority of roles in the acting industry are still given to white people. But what struck me as really strange about that is the fact that the population of the UK is only about 4% black. It would be weird for white people not to be the majority in the country where they still make up the highest demographic. But again, this whole thing of socially engineering society so that you have a face like mine, it's
because they don't base the individuality from themselves. They base it on these concepts of what race is, which is the issue. Let me quickly comment on the acting thing.
Sure.
So my mindset's, like I said, very based in meritocracy. I mean, my merch business I just started, I'm starting to go into launch next year in January.
Fantastic.
Is called Merit Merch. So meritocracy is one of my
shilling time, ladies and gentlemen. Shilling time.
Oh God. The company's not even live yet. It's too early to show. But these people, I don't like what they're doing because of this simple thing. I believe if the person creating the art or whatever wants a character to be to look a certain way and have a certain history and a certain ethnic background, certain religion, whatever, if it go ahead, it's your artwork. The issue is when they try to force it in and they do it simply based upon these principles, for lack of a better term, of identitarianism, of intersectionality, of equity, or whatever it means nowadays, because they keep changing the goalposts. Whilst I guess they're allowed to, I guess the issue is that because of our moral framework, we allow them to flourish. They keep doing these things, but what we need to do is we need to simply just start doing our own things and doing things based upon merit, upon how well written the characters are, how good the story is. And what people will do is they will look at the quality of the artwork created and see how well it's done, and they will see, well, this one's just harping on about the skin color of the main actress and the character, whereas this one's actually showing a very compelling, very well-made story, and showing a journey through these characters and an overarching plot, and has amazing world building. I'm going to opt into this universe because it has more to offer than the same regurgitated, partially broken messages that the first one pushes forward. I don't think there's anything we can do about people pushing for specific characters of a specific race, because the issue is that certain stories will have main characters that are a specific race, and there's nothing we can really do about that. What we can do instead is to focus on building culture in our own form, is to start making better quality work. It's what I'm trying to do. The business I'm working on now is going to help me fund my own productions. So I can do this stuff. And the funny thing is, they can't label me a white supremacist, so ha ha ha.
They can. They can actually.
But they can try. It's not going to work well for them. So I know what I want to do, and I'm going to do that. And I want to support people who want to do this as well. I think there's nothing we can really do about people pushing their artwork in a way that kind of prioritizes specific races and pushing out others. And then you have this woman on your Instagram feed basically saying that white people complaining. I get it. The people who are in the industry are in there mainly because of the merits of their skin color and what ideology they push, mainly the ideology modern race, in my opinion. So let's create an alternative. That's the solution. I think that's how we solve it. Let's create a solution that's based upon individuality, meritocracy, on the actual quality of the artwork being created, and just dismiss the identitarianism way. That's how we do it. We influence culture so that the next generations that are raised will come online and watch our stuff and like what's happened in those things. Like a lot of people I know grew up watching Star Trek. I grew up watching Star Wars.
Oh, I did too.
Yeah, exactly.
We had a very big pub conversation about that as well, so that was great.
We'll have to say that for another podcast at this point. But I grew up watching these things and seeing actual quality artwork being made. And the last thing that was on my mind was, what skin color was Han Solo? What skin color was Luke Skywalker? It was, what is the backstory to Han Solo? Which they kind of butchered in the Solo Star story. We won't get into that. But is Luke going to become a Jedi? You know, is he going to actually learn the skills now that Obi-Wan's gone and hence Yoda came to play? And will we defeat evil? And they, spoiler alert, they did. So, no, actually, no, they didn't, because the sequels.
All right. I won't have them mentioned on this podcast. Okay, right. I'm all for freedom of speech, but it has consequences. All right, and you.
Yes, I do. Again, we'll have to do a media podcast at some point. I'm happy to come whenever to do that. So let me know. But we're being all geeky right now. I want to say something. So Halo Infinite recently came out, and I want to make a comment. From Halo 3, a quote from Artas Vadime, or whatever his name is. The guy who was the Spec Ops leader in Halo 2 who got promoted to Shipmaster. He says, a single flush spore can wipe out a species. So, using that same quote, we can then kind of morph it into what I'm about to say. The issue is that you have a lot of the identitarians, the partisan left, we just call it the intersectional types, are pushing their ideologies forward. What we need to do is to combat them with an alternative way of thinking, or ways of thinking, and basically add more conversations to the market that don't just circle around this narrative, this echo chamber that's being pushed on us on a daily basis by the mainstream media, by big tech, by Hollywood, by all these main institutions that kind of as people call it, like connect to the establishment, right? We need to make alternatives to this so that other arguments are being made. And what people will do is they will naturally gravitate to ours because it's based upon these healthy, rational principles that we push forward. What people will then do is they will stop watching the only stuff that's been forced down their throats, which is the woke shit. That's what it is, for simplicity. And they will find all the many, many other things with other different principles that will be different. Like, for example, you may make something that is a little bit different to mine. They may have a common thing like liberty, but they will have different perspectives and different ideologies and different ways of thinking and different perspectives. Just be different than the same regurgitated message that's been pushed in the establishment circle. If we can do that, that's how we destroy that single flood spore. Because it is a single flood spore. It's one single hive mind, essentially, of thinking, where if you disagree with it, you're a bigot, you're a racist, you're sexist, you're misogynist, you're transphobic, and all the other icks out there. It's one single flood spore that seems massive. But the species need to actually come together because a species has many, many different opinions because they're all individuals come together. That's what we need to work on. And in order to do that, we need to find alternative ways to get our work out. That issue is that they're so ingrained into the control structures, such as the media, such as Hollywood, that people really they see them first and then only think this is where it is. We need to make alternatives to that. We need to decentralize the network so that this single flood spore is alone when there's thousands, if not millions, of other alternatives. So yeah.
Yeah, it does, and it was very, very eloquently put.
Thank you.
I think
I do that from time to time.
You do. You've been dropping eloquence all over this podcast. I have to say, I think that I'm trying to do my part. That's basically the purpose of why I set up this entire podcast. It was just essentially so that because so many people from all sides of the spectrum, because as we can see with the subversion, it is breaking our society, and we can't even all now agree on the on the presupposition that this society is worth having and is a fundamentally good thing. And if we can't all at least hold that, then we've lost it and it's gone. And it can be taken any which direction simply by that which has the greatest amount of power to do it.
That's do you know why? Do you know why certain things, like why it's difficult? Because not every society, for lack of a better term, plays by the rules. You have the society, or not even societies. We have, let's just call it a group. We have a group, or an ideal, or an idea, or a concept that doesn't abide by the rules that everyone else plays. So, liberty has a very good, healthy moral framework, right? Where honesty is a factor, where integrity is a factor, and many other things. Some of these other ones don't have that. You understand? So the identitarian types, they lie, they cheat, they steal, they manipulate, they subvert. These are not things that are out in the open. They're very covert and very dangerous.
Well,
we're not doing that. So they have an edge by doing those things. It's very rogue, for lack of a better term, not to quote D&D, but
yeah. I mean, I would argue that they're simply symptoms of human nature and will spring up in any society. But I would say that having certain goals would make you more, what's the word I'm looking for? Would hold you prey to them worse than others. There is just one. There were so many things we could talk about, but I am conscious of the time, and I don't like to go too far over an hour because I feel that I don't want to be enormously entitled to people's time. I realise they have a lot on in their daily lives.
No, I know
but I would just end from my point of view, and then I'll allow you the privilege of the closing comments. And which is just one of the better scenes from Peter Jackson's Hobbit trilogy.
Which I haven't seen.
Which is where Galadriel is at Rivendell talking to Gandalf, and she asks him, of all the people in the world to go on this quest to take out the dragon and give the dwarfs back their home, the question is, why Bilbo Baggins? And it's an excellent question. Of all the people in Middle-earth, why Bilbo Baggins? And Gandalf gives a wonderful, wonderful answer. And I think it's something that inspires me on a daily basis. And basically Gandalf says something, I'm paraphrasing, but he says, I don't know, he says that Saruman believes that it's only great power that can hold the darkness at bay, but that's not what I've found. I've found that it's simple, ordinary, everyday acts of kindness that keep the evil at bay. It's just regular, good, decent people going about their daily lives and making moral actions that encourage charity and responsibility and kindness towards one another. And I think it's the message that we should all care to hear right now. And I think it's the one that's the most important for all of us.
Oh, I love that. And I need to watch that movie. I need to watch the Hobbit trilogy now. Because I've watched Lord of the Rings quite a bit, but I need to watch that.
Best trilogy. Anyway, go on.
Well, Wayne Stan.
Closing
So
quotes,
there's
mate.
a quote from a civil rights activist that's not the type of civil rights activist that you're probably familiar with nowadays. It's a guy called Daryl Davis. This is the guy who's a jazz musician from America. He's about 70-ish, something, or 60-something years old now. He de-radicalized 200 KKK members. Now, whilst I haven't de-radicalized a KKK member, I've technically de-radicalized a white supremacist online. A guy I used to game with. I'll tell that story another time. But he says, we're living in, one of the quotes he says, he has lots of quotes that I love, but this is one I think is relevant to what you mentioned from Hobbit, and that's, we are living in space age times, but there are too many of us thinking with Stone Age minds. And we reference human nature and how that seems to be the consequence of things. I think that's true. And what we need to do is we need to get with these space age times, because we're sending people to the moon. We are potentially going to colonize Mars in the next 20 years. We're going to send people back to the moon to actually make permanent colonies. We're about to start unlocking the secrets to our universe. We need to kind of upgrade our minds. We need to stop thinking with these impulsive, simplistic ways of thinking. We need to become more moral. We need to reject these dangerous mindsets, these dangerous principles that lie and cheat and steal and subvert from the rest of the world. And we need to kind of push these ideas and systems forward that really, really, really do enlighten us and enhance us into being space age.
Nice. Nice. I wish I'd had a few pints before you said that, but it was very beautiful, very beautiful. So, right,
Thank you very much.
Joe, all that's left to do is to thank you a tremendous amount for coming on the show today. I've had an absolute joy talking with you. I'm not going to reveal it quite just yet, but as to the full intentions of what it is. But you'll be seeing Joe back here relatively soon, ladies and gentlemen. Perhaps, possibly, the first podcast to kick off the new year. And we'll take it. I'll just leave that hanging there, but it's going to be something a little different. We're going to mix it up a little bit, and I hope that you like it. So, Joe, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
All that's left to do is to apologise to you all for the constant sniffling you must have heard throughout this podcast, as I am just getting over a cold, and I didn't bring anything in to prep me.
Oh, mate, don't worry, I was doing exactly the same thing.
Yeah. So if you can excuse our sniffles, I will link.
Winter is coming. Sorry,
winter is coming.
Actually, it's here, isn't it?
Oh, it's very here. Yeah, I've noticed a cold recently. Yes.
Yeah. No, it was snowing when we on the day when we went up to Hemel for the film drop. It was snowing out there, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
White Walkers are coming.
Right. Let me close this stuff. I want to go make dinner. No, I'm joking. So I'm going to link you all to Joe's YouTube channel, I think, because I think that'd be a polite thing to do, and he's got some good content on there for if you're.
I'll be making more stuff on there literally this week. I'm planning a video that's actually going to be delving into the Subversion thing, as well as a bunch of other stuff. I'm trying to make a video every day. Every week. So
wow.
And I want to start doing like a live stream where we kind of do what we did today, but we also play games while we're talking about stuff. So like just a discussion thing.
Oh, beautiful.
Where we chill. And my friend's trying to get me to play Phasmophobia, and that's terrifying. So
Awesome.
imagine I'm being all profound, and then I scream because a ghost attacks me. So that'd be fun. So yeah, I'm bringing you in that. So
Oh, wow. I'm getting my first invites, ladies and gentlemen, to hang out with the bigwigs. So this is really something. I'll also obviously link Irina's artwork down below, as I always do. I absolutely love it. I still do, and I'll never change it. So
I might get her to do my podcasting actually as well.
you do what? Sorry.
I might get her to do my podcasting because I really
Yeah. I'll hook her up with you, and we'll.
Excellent.
I'm sure she'd love to take the commission. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. If time is available to me, I will do one more podcast before the new year, and we'll take it from there. So, until next time, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in to Amiable Arguments. Ta-ta and farewell.